stop isolating. Isolation leads to way more suffering than is necessary. But community and collaboration is literally the answer for everything.
Welcome to the Dream Architect Life. I'm Brian Sweet, and I don't know if I've been as happy to have a guest on as I am today. Everybody is in for such a magical treat. And why do I say that? Well, several reasons. First of all, I had an opportunity to go to a mastermind or an event that I would say to most people could be called life-changing, and it was just magical. And why am I wanting to talk about it today? Well, really, if you think about all the pillars of the Dream Architect life, one that we deal with is purpose or lack of purpose, especially when somebody's in transition. They maybe know where they came from, but they don't know where they're going. And we run across that all the time. And so I'm always on the outlook for who is out there that can provide that resource or help to get you to the next chapter or guide you through to find out, how do I make my next chapter in life even better? And so with me today is just, I'm so excited, is Brooke Casanovas. And the event that I attended is called The Last Mastermind. So Brooke, such a joy to have you here today. Maybe just start out by telling us a little bit about yourself, and then let's dig into this event that I attended so we can share all the good stuff that happened while I was there.
Well, let me just say, first of all, Brian, you're overly generous in your intro. And also, I've never met someone whose last name fits them more fitting. And that is like the fact that your last name is Sweet. You embody all of like the sweetness, the tenderness, the kindness, the altruism that I would hope that more people in the world have. And so I'm just so grateful as always to be in your presence, because you leave people better than they were before you met them. And I'm just so grateful for you. No, I'm not. I'm just reflecting what I experienced with you at this gathering, and it was just such a joy. But a little bit about me. So I have been in the entrepreneurship game for almost a decade now. And in my time, I've seen everything from online services to the e-commerce world to high ticket sales to, I mean, you name it, SaaS. I've been either a consultant or running my own companies doing it. But one of the things, as we talk about purpose, that I find so interesting from my experience was in all of my roles or all the different businesses I built, one of the things that always kept coming back to me is throughout the 10 years, I had often attended events or gatherings or masterminds. And I was always that like critic in the back corner that was writing down the lessons I was not only learning that were really good for me, but also the takeaways as to why I was observing that the synergy, the collaboration, the abundance, the human capital wasn't being capitalized on at the event. And so much of it was because of who the event was ran by. And I just took these notes for over a decade, and I had hosted and I had attended and I'd even spoken at other events. But I hit this point in like my career where it was actually COVID. It was a great exposure for me, a great reflection for me, where I had done a ton of consulting. I had run a few of my own businesses, and I was just like, I just want to serve people in the way that gives me fulfillment, but also blesses them because of my gifts in ways that I haven't yet experimented with. And what I came to realize was during COVID, I had several friends that, unbeknownst to me, I mean, the universe works in very mysterious ways. I had several friends that started calling me after I like made this plea to the universe. Like, I want to be doing things that I'm good at, but I also bring great fulfillment. And, I had these friends that started calling me, and they were like, "Hey, Brooke, can we go to lunch? Can we do a virtual meetup?" And these were all friends that were highly successful, very networked. And, from the outside, you'd go, wow, their life's the North Star for me. Like, they're amazing. And then when I got on the phone with them, they just gave me the download of how miserably rich they were and how hard life was and how they had lost themselves in the work that they had done. They had reached their own quote unquote peak. They had no idea what was next. And I just happened to be the friend that they felt comfortable sharing this with. And so, long story short, I just got all these friends together and I was like, let's just put you in a room together. None of them knew each other. And like, I just want you to see how normal it is that your experience is, because most of these people couldn't go to like the average Joe and tell them their problems. Otherwise, they'd get the response of like, let me play the small violin for you. But like, these are actual people with actual feelings that had real problems. And so I wanted them to see themselves as human. And I also wanted them to treat themselves with more compassion. And most importantly, have a community that helps them through this transition by helping them remind themselves of who they are and what they came here to do. So I put them together and it just like, it was amazing. Like I just facilitated an experience where a lot of them became business partners. Many of them became family travelers together, and most of them became clarity advisors for each other to say, I see myself in you, but this is what I think your next step is in order to get you out of this rut or out of this quote unquote sabbatical. So after that, it just became clear to me without asking for it, without chasing this thing. It just kind of came to me. And then I started recognizing how many people actually struggle with this, but how many people are in isolation because they can't talk about it, or they feel like there's just not a holding space for someone to hold compassion for that kind of problem, so to speak. And so that's where the last mastermind started.
Yeah, no, and it was, well, first of all, the problem that you expressed is so true. People could have these amazingly successful careers and, they're known for what they did and those things. And then all of a sudden they're the garbage taker outer or whatever.
Yeah.
And, the second chapter then becomes boring and unfulfilling. And,
Yeah.
you didn't do all that hard work to have that happen. That's supposed to be the actually better part of your life. And so one of my missions is really to find amazing people like yourself that have created this environment
Yeah.
where these things can be talked about, discussed, and solutions can be created so that you can have these amazing next chapters. And so I've got a lot of questions for you, but I'd love to talk a little bit about the event itself, because I think that'll just create the framework for the magic that you create.
Sure.
So first of all, publicly, let me thank our mutual friend, Reagan Archibald,
Oh,
for
I love him.
hooking us up together.
Yeah.
And as I mentioned earlier, I do these things, first of all, because I want to find resources for people and have avenues that I've personally experienced. And I can then feel very comfortable sharing that, yeah, this would be a great, great venue or great thing to participate in. So first of all, that was the main purpose. But I think the biggest thing that I got out of it was something personal. And I want to thank you for that, because I go to a lot of masterminds and I'm in a lot of different groups, and I can truly say that what I experienced, I haven't experienced. I've been in business 45 years, and what you do and how you do it is magical. First of all, you curate an amazing group of individuals. And then your magic is you are the leader, but you just set the stage for everybody to learn from themselves by framing the right questions or the right way to ask questions. And then you kind of back out and let the group do their thing.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, one of the things that I got out of this was, at the end, I think there was 13 of us, if I recall correctly, 12, 13 of us.
Yeah.
It was like, like a family reunion by the end of the 2 days. Like, you knew everything about people. You had this comfort level. People were sharing stuff that I was like amazed people would share. There was tears, there was joy, there was everything in between. and it was just the atmosphere and the proper questions. And I know you said you don't ever do two of them the same, and I can see how you do that because you take what's going on
Yeah.
and then you frame what happens next
Yeah.
based on what you're seeing. And
Yeah.
it was seriously, Brooke, it was absolutely magical. And we saw so many light bulbs go off, so many problems solved. I don't know, what you want to comment on any of
Yeah.
that, but that's been my experience. And I just want to thank you for creating that framework and allowing everybody to be vulnerable but being so
Yeah.
helpful in the end of creating all these solutions and literally some lifetime friends.
Oh, I love that you say that. And a couple of thoughts that I have as you were sharing your experience, which I love so much because it's what I hope people walk away with, is the first one is I think a lot of masterminds, they screen for the person or the business, but most masterminds don't screen energy. And what I mean by that is like, it is very, very important to me. That is like of the highest importance is I am screening the type of energy that I'm saying yes to that can come into my rooms. And the reason for that is because the energy will either make or break the culture, the collaboration, and the connections that are going to
Wow.
exist. And so the type of energy I'm looking for, and I can most often just feel is like, are they a giver or a taker? Are they self-saturated or are they other oriented? Do they have skill sets or are they faking something that they're not? Do they do they have a track history of being able to provide value and not just like walk away with just price? Like these are important things, and it's very, very important to recognize that as any mastermind or gatherer owner, that your job is to be the screener of energy, of people, and of their skill sets. Because if you're not, that is going to influence the environment that is created or not created on behalf of others. And so, environment is everything, but environment is completely inhibited or created through the energy of all of the souls that come to your gathering. So, that's the first thing I would say is like, you can't just be vulnerable in any environment. You have to allow for the type of people that have the type of energy that's like open, right? Like the people that I screen energy wise, they are the most open minded people. Does that mean that they like are doormats and like they don't have specific values or align with things that are important to them? No, it means that their way is not always the highway and that they are willing to show the tough parts of themselves as well as like their strongest strengths. And so vulnerability can only happen if the owner of gatherings is like intentionally screening the energy for that.
Hmm.
And I screened a lot. I screened so much of like the people and like how they would react in conversations. There were a couple that I just said, this isn't a good time or it's not a good fit. And I genuinely can say that I said no to that because I'm not thinking about me and what I can get out of this. I'm thinking if that person was in the group that I've curated, would that add magic or take away magic from what's going to exist? And those are always my prompts and questions. So screening is very, very important. And the second thing is, I think most owners of or CEOs of masterminds or gatherings, the reason that a lot of them were detrimental to me is because somehow in some way they always made it about themselves. What if you had a facilitator or a master gatherer that their only job and objective and intention was to make other people's lives better and happier by shining the light on them and like making the mastermind truly about the alliance that's there instead of the curator or the creator that made it? Like that's I can't make it about me. If I made it about me and I put myself too much in the circles or I governed all of the activities based on what I want instead of what the group needed, it would completely just kill all synergy. And so I just think that you have to be an experienced facilitator that whose intention is to say, how can I make this the best experience for the participants instead of make me look really, really good?
Yeah. I hadn't thought about that, but now that you say that, those are two things that you excelled at because the energy was amazing in the room, and you 100% were concerned about the outcome for others. Because
Mm.
after you gave direction, as I mentioned, you just kind of went to the side and you were listening
Yeah.
for sure to
Yeah.
determine where does it go from here.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, so thank you for sharing that. I've been trying to figure out like what are all the little secrets that Brooke did, and now I think you let the cat out of the bag there. So
I also
that's
think,
awesome.
yeah, I also think to say one more thing. The only reason I was able to do that too is I think onboarding forms that are like very short and succinct, understanding your participants' objectives for their gathering is so important because then you can reverse engineer the activities that are necessary in order to meet not just the group, but the individual needs. And I did onboarding forms for all of you of saying like, what do you want out of this? And what is your hope or your outcome from
Yeah.
this experience? And then it was from your guys' responses that I was like, this activity is just going to be for Brian, or this activity is going to be for like 7 out of the 12, or this activity is going to be for all of them. But like you have to go in with outcomes and objectives because every person joins groups, masterminds, or gatherings for different reasons. Some do it for friendships, some do it for networking, some do it to gain knowledge, some do it to just like get clarity. But you have to know what their intention or their objective is. And then the second thing is like, you also have to have your own objectives or outcomes. Mine in all 3 days of my gathering are always just two things. I make it very simple. They will get clarity on where they're going next, and they will have a community to support them in their next steps. And
Yeah.
if those two things aren't met, then I didn't do my job. But in between those things, it's like, now let's meet the micro outcomes that they discussed in their onboarding forms.
Hey, Brittany here. In case you hadn't heard, our latest book, Dream Architecture, is available for the taking. Think about it like this. What is your biggest, wildest dream of what retirement could look like? Not the dream that your friends have, or your parents maybe had, or your coworkers. Your best dream, the unreasonable one, the one that you might have trouble admitting even to yourself. So that is what the Dream Architecture book is about. Hop on over to dreamarchitecturebook.com so you can start dreaming big today.
I would say, you absolutely mastered that because at least me personally, and as I mentioned before the podcast started, I've been in touch with, maybe half of the individuals, and I've got more to come, just following up on different things. And they all expressed the same thing. They all got out of it what they wanted, even though everything that we each wanted was different. And it doesn't hurt that you have a spectacular location in Sundance, Utah, at a great house. And then, you had this kind of fun outside experience at the Reed's, rare bookstore. That didn't hurt a thing, but that just added to the whole impact of it. But I guess one question I'd love to ask you, because you have a lot of experience in this, especially running these masterminds, but people do get stuck, especially when they're in these transitions. And where do you find that they can kind of maybe get in their own way? And is there just general advice on how maybe they could help themselves? Obviously, these masterminds are a great way, but just any tips on that?
Yeah. Two things that come to top of mind, Brian, is one, we get in our own way when we try to solve problems in isolation. And that's why I think that community is so important. Some of the best ideas, the most important ideas, the most influential, impactful ideas have not come from someone sitting in a bedroom by themselves and just writing out their ideas of what needs to happen. The best, most transformative, like ideas, innovation, solutions have always come in alliances. Napoleon Hill said that. And he had this vision of what true masterminding would be. And I think that as you look at like all of the, stars like Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg and like all of these people, you look at them and you're like, wow, they're brilliant. But if you actually look behind closed doors at like these men and Steve Jobs and Oprah and like all of these amazing influences, you actually see that they weren't in isolation to become who they needed to become. They surrounded themselves with people that helped them see who they could become and what they could do. And so I think that in order to get out of any mess you're in, stop isolating. Isolation leads to way more suffering than is necessary. But community and collaboration is literally the answer for everything. Always. It always is the answer. And most of the time, that needs to be like small groups, intimate groups, groups that I call are T-shaped groups. You can go wide with them in experience, but you can go deep with them in synergy and ideas and innovation. But community is always the answer. So that's my first thing in order to help them get out of their own way. And then I think the second thing that it's really, really important to recognize is, and this is a very like abstract idea, so I hope I can bring it down to be a little bit more concrete, is the difference of power versus force. The most like impactful things that we create in our life are usually not done by us forcing our way to create them. It's by aligning ourselves and our values and our energies with the purest motivations that we have and letting those things come to us. Now, I'm not saying that what that means is you like sit on your couch and you wait all day for like the phone call or the next idea or the next opportunity. That's not what I am saying. What I am saying is that there's a difference between trying to like grit your way to something and force your way into the next opportunity versus allowing the universe to do what it's so good at, which is having our back and letting those things to come to us. Because you and myself included can probably attest on this podcast that the best things that came to us in our lives were things that we could have never curated on our own.
Oh,
The
100%.
opportunities, the
Yeah.
people we met, the experiences we had, the innovative solutions we came up with, none of those we could have ever forced through human grit. And if we did, the outcome would have been very, very different in terms of fruit. But like most good things, all good things happen when we just surrender and we let those things come instead of force them to happen.
Do you think people do that because they're fearful or they don't feel like, gee, no one will understand, or I don't have anybody to talk to about this? Do you feel like that's some of it? Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of it is they force things in order to feel that they are maintaining more control than they actually have. And that control piece is dictated by their fear of like, I need to make something happen. I need to prove something. I need to do something. But like, that's actually not the type of energy you want to create anything with.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really, really great question.
Yeah.
What is it? I'm curious for you, like, has there been something that has been done completely by the universe and its power that you could have never planned for versus something that you just like tried to force and it totally collapsed in your face? Like, was there something in your life or career that was completely unexpected that came because you surrendered and you allowed the universe to do its job?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is I always wanted to kind of have a unique process for our wealth management company.
Yeah.
And so we struggled. We used to call it the freedom solution, and that never really took hold. And for whatever reason, I've always been mesmerized by young people and how big and audacious they think, and all the possibilities that, when you're 5, 6 years old, everybody's going to be president and astronauts, and then we lose that. And I've read a lot of books on dreaming, and then all of a sudden, it just came to me that what I really need to do in life is help architect people's dreams and get them to think differently,
Wow.
because literally anybody, because I've had this happen so many different times, if you open your mind, have the right mindset, and you think about what you want your life to become,
Yeah.
it will absolutely appear in front of you and all the answers will be
Huh.
there.
Huh.
The key is once that happens, you have to take some action
Yes.
and move it forward. So that's the
Yes.
first thing that comes to me, Brooke. I mean,
Wow.
do you have an example that you'd love to share? Because I think, there's like multiple things that happen all the time in both of our lives that you'd go, I can't believe that happened, but it, like osmosis. So
Yeah. No, well, I love your example so much because it is the balance of like not forcing, but letting it come to you. And then once it comes to you, you take immediate action,
yeah,
right? Like that example for me is the last mastermind. It was like these friends came to me behind closed doors. I didn't ask for it, but it came and the opportunity presented itself. And then I was like, these are the steps I need to take now in order to curate these gatherings intentionally and make something of this. I couldn't just sit back and relax now that I had had one experience with these friends that happened to have the same problem. I had to now do something about it. And so I love your example so much because it shows the balance of, okay, let it come. But once it comes, jump on the opportunity and do something about it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Thank you. So like I said, I found just the way you do your mastermind magical. Would you say there's a certain type of person, or when would a person want to go to, the last
Yeah.
mastermind? Is there any guidance that you can give our audience on, like, when and who would be best
Yeah.
experience what I thought was just awesome?
It's a really good question. I think it's when people are, I usually catch them not in the fresh honeymoon phase of sabbatical. And what I mean by that is like after someone's exited a company or they've done something that they've just like worked really, really hard in and it's been their entire world and entire identity. The last thing they want to do is like, let's figure out what's next. They usually want a break. And so I am like the sweet spot after they've recognized on their quote unquote break that they can only golf so many days, that they can only travel to so many locations, that they can only like play so much before they recognize that the work ethic, the problem solution, like ideas and practices that they've implemented for years are going dormant and they're not fulfilled. And so I'm like this sweet spot where there's like this self-awareness of like, but now I want to do something meaningful and impactful. And it doesn't need to be for the money anymore. It doesn't need to be for my ego rubbing. It doesn't need to be for the accolades. It needs to be something where I'm like, I feel in deep alignment. And honestly, at the end of the day, it's where a person is to feel needed, whether they want to admit it or not. They want to start applying their skill sets, everything they've learned over the past few years to like making humanity better and happier because of it. And it's very altruistic. These are people that have either switched roles, they've exited, they've had some type of life transition that has woken them up to like what their true mission is. And they're like, it's kind of scary, like what I need to do next. And most of them do have some type of clarity on it, but they need a community that they can be vulnerable with of like, this is what I'm thinking, but this is what I'm scared of. They need a community of people that can think bigger. Like if they're going to be the smartest person in the room, it's not the right room. Every person in this room should feel like the dumbest person in the room. And that is what's going to make other people's ideas so like awe-inspiring and like, wow, I never even thought of that.
Yeah.
These are people that are not only in transition, but they're incredibly open-minded. They're not obsessed with like holding on to one way of thinking or one way of thought or one way of behavior. They're very interested in like culture and people and ideas and innovation, and they just want to be with other people that are like that too. I would also say that the commonality for all of them is that I tend to attract energetically people that are highly self-aware, that have an incredible amount of emotional intelligence, and they have done the spiritual work in their life to sit with themselves. I don't think a lot of people really sit with themselves. And you'd be amazed at what kind of magic happens in a room with people that are very, very self-aware and have sat with themselves long enough to make sure that when they go into another room, they can make it about other people and not about them.
Yeah, a very, very interesting phrase. I saw that, yeah, actually happen. So you used two words that I want to expand on. You used value alignment, and how important is that in, this whole transition process?
I think it's absolutely essential because
Yeah.
most people realize in their transition that although what they did is amazing and great, there were some things that were off center in terms of their values that they were just conforming with, because most of the time it's Western culture ideas of like who you need to be, what you need to do, and what you need to value. And they soon like run this rat race of buying into that culture or those ideas that society is telling them, only to get to the end and be like, I'm completely unfulfilled by something that someone told me I would be like the happiest when I acquired it. And that's what makes this different, is like when you're going into your next season, identities are the funnest thing to play with because you can decide who you want to be, what that person looks like, how you want to act, and what you want to value. And it's like a complete dream board that's completely empty that you now get to decide and play with. And especially as you reflect on, where was I out of my alignment? Where was I out of like consciousness? And where was I out of values that I thought were like important to me, but I didn't live by? And that reflection is so important for future projection. And so it's such a great question. Values are everything, but most of the time we don't start with those, but you surely do in your second act because you see how fundamental they are to everything.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah. So obviously the name of the podcast is The Dream Architect Life. And so dreaming is, a big topic. And so maybe one or two questions here. What does dreaming mean to you today? And then maybe tell me a little bit about what is one of your biggest, most important, personally to you, dreams or aspirations?
Oh, it's such a good question. And actually, what I love so much about the work that you do, Brian, is that you're taking like the future presidents and the astronauts that everyone thought they would be when they were like 4 or 5 years old, and you're putting that same type of energy and frequency back into them as like a 40 or 50 or 60-year-old, which is so rare. Like your gift to do that is so amazing. And it's why people change in your presence, Brian, because you're invoking that astronaut or that president to like come back in them and see it. And I think that, so for dreaming, what like dreaming means to me is like, it's tapping back into that energy of like when I was 4 or 5 years old and I felt invincible. I could do anything. And there weren't any hindering beliefs that caused me to feel like I wasn't good enough or I can't do it. Or what if I fail? Like none of those were even options. And so dreaming to me is doing, I think Tony Robbins said it best when he said it was actually the definition of success, but I think it's living the dream is doing what you want, when you want, with who you want at any time. Like that really is the dream.
Yeah.
And so for me, as I've tried to dream architect what I'm going for and what I want, at the end of the day, like as much as I am also doing it for the participants, the last mastermind, I will tell you selfishly what I do and why I do it is because I have always had this vision of like bearing children that would have mentors that would guide them throughout their entire life. And one of my screening processes is actually, if I had one of my children sit in a room individually with this individual before I say yes that they can come to my event, would that individual be able to relate, inspire, and make my child better than before they met them? And if the answer is yes, they're in. And if the answer is questionable or no, then they're not, because the entire premise for the last mastermind selfishly is I want to have an environment and a group of people that when I have children, if I put my children in those rooms, they would be able to accomplish what they were meant here to do on the earth because of the people that they were influenced and surrounded by in their life.
Wow. That was that we could wrap up on that on the podcast, but we're not going to quite do that yet. But I'm so excited for you to meet my partner Brittany, because you two are like peas in a pod. So that's going to be like some magic in and of itself when you two get a chance to get to meet each other. But so getting close to the end, I can't believe, we've gone through about 45 minutes already, but we could probably do this for hours, Brooke. But a couple of things. One, is there anything I didn't ask you that I should have asked you that would be helpful to anyone? Because I think that just this whole subject, if we approach it right and can become a resource for people, I totally agree with you. I mean, it's so magical to help people get from here to there, because when they're stuck, and that is such an unpleasant scenario. And you want people to be in that zone for as little time as possible. So
oh, it's such a good question. And I think that maybe it's not a question, but an observation that I think is fascinating about the people that come to the last mastermind is, if you ask them at the very beginning of the event, like, why did you come? Hands down, like 99% of them, it's so interesting what they'll say. They'll say, it just felt right. Like they don't even have like a concrete reason other than they know that they're in transition and maybe they could get a little help. Like there really isn't like a huge banger of like, well, this marketing got me and this headline or this hook really got me in. Like energetically, they will describe it as it just felt right. And to that, I have to say, thank you. Like this is so much trust for so many people to not only spend their resources of money, but more importantly, their time to spend 3 days with a stranger like me or with people that they've never met and just trust that something beautiful is going to come out of it. But you don't even know. Like, I don't even release the agenda of like what we do because half of the time I don't know yet. I'm like, I got to meet them. I got to see their energy. I got to see what their objectives are. And then it will be curated. And I take that hour by hour and I take that very seriously. But like, I just have to say that like, if you don't have a very good reason to come other than it feels right, that's the only reason that you need. And I'm sorry that sounds a little like frou-frou, but like, that's the kind of energy we want. We don't want people that come with like agendas or like ROIs on their mind, or we just want people that just, they feel like it's right. If they can add value, they will. And if they can give more than they take, then that's their purpose. But at the end of the day, like magic will be created with that kind of openness.
yeah, no, there's no question about it. There definitely was magic created. And I personally, I got a lot of benefit out of it. I've never really taken 2 days myself just to think about, lots of things. You just get busy helping others. But it's one of the things that I probably feel really good about is the giving part, because we helped a lot of others with issues and gave thoughts and suggestions, and it's just through your framework and how you lined things up. And so when each of us left, and I'm maybe speaking for the group, but I'd be shocked if anybody didn't feel this way. Not only did you personally get whatever you needed and a whole lot more in my case, but you really felt good about being there because you were able to help people get somewhere, answer a question, get over an issue. And, it's just like anything charitable. You always get more out of doing anything charitable than the charity.
It's true.
So it was very, heartfelt to, feel like, gee, I made a difference, in.
Oh, and I can't tell you how many people came up to me after some of the roundtables that I facilitated that said, I don't know where I would be today and where I'll be in the next 10 years if Brian wasn't in my
Oh,
group. Like, I think, and there were tons of those experiences of like, you had the Bryans showing up in ways that were just like amazing for these other humans. And now their life is completely different because of it. And so, one, I just have to thank you. But two, I would be very curious to know. I know you knew Reagan, but was there anyone that you didn't know in that group that you were like pleasantly surprised by the influence that they had on your life in the short time that you were with them?
yeah, I would tell you there was several, and I'm following up, and in a couple of cases, I think they're going to be very impactful on things I'm building and developing. So
Mm,
just frameworks they gave me. So we're still, working on some of that, but 100%. Yeah, no.
mm,
Yeah, it's just, I just, once again, I can't tell you enough good things about it, and just such a unique experience. But um, if we don't probably stop this sometime soon, Brooke, will go forever. But so one big thing, this is probably the most important thing. If somebody wants to learn more about the last
yeah.
mastermind, how do I get involved? What's all it about? I mean, obviously they
Yes.
can talk to me, but
Yes.
you're the master of creating this experience. So what's the best way to touch base with you, learn more, learn
Yes.
when the events are going to be? Because I think you do a couple of these, 2, 3 of them a year, right?
Yeah, the next one is September 10th through the 13th, and it's in Indian Wells, California. It will
Ah,
always be at like a beautiful location because environment is everything. So we all stay together at the same place. But if they want to learn more about it, they can go to www.thelastmastermind.com or they can just directly message me on LinkedIn.
okay, that sounds great. And we'll put all that in the show notes. And anything else you'd like to say before we end this amazing podcast?
Well, if any of you are in question about I love what Brian says, dream architect your life, you absolutely need to talk to Brian because I have been amazed. He is a natural architect for people in every relationship. And I'm just so grateful that I now have you in my Rolodex for the lives that you can bless because of your gift, Brian. So thank you.
Well, thank you. And I feel exactly the same way, Brooke. And the check's in the mail. So appreciate those that kind of comments. So,
No.
well, this has been absolutely amazing. And thank you so much, Brooke, for your time and your wisdom and all you do for helping people make the next chapter, so much better than it could have been. And look forward to staying in touch. And thank you for the audience. And we look forward to seeing you all in the next episode of the Dream Architect Life. Have a great day.
Bye, friends.